Nemesis, the apex predator that we saw from all the iterations of Resident Evil 3, the constant reminder that we are never safe when you're his specific target, the Tyrant who gave us so much terror as he hunted us down in Raccoon City. Though the threat of Nemesis is definitely fell, we knew while playing as Jill Valentine in RE3 that we'll be able to overcome such a monstrosity. But that begs the question, if put in a situation that has you, yes you, in the shoes of Jill Valentine, would you be able to survive Nemesis?
Good luck!
So this video will be the start of a series of surviving some of our favorite characters from the gaming industry and seeing how our matchups against them would turn out. Where in this episode, we'll break down all the important attributes of Nemesis and gather all the information that we've known of him throughout the years as we mold the prime version of this Tyrant versus us mortals. So starting off, we can begin with the biological attributes and causation of his physical prowess, which at this point in time, Nemesis is regarded as one of the Umbrella Corporation's most successful BOWs that has ever been created, stemming from a viable host who was able to receive the strain of the T virus, but was genetically capable of benefiting from his infection without any disastrous drawbacks, bringing him part of the line of the T-103 Tyrants, but with the added inoculation of the any alpha parasite, allowing him to have greater intelligence compared to his other BOW counterparts. So now, after covering his genetic background, let's move on to his physical attributes, his overall intelligence, and his dexterity of using weapons, starting with the culmination of the T-virus and any alpha parasite's benefits. This results into this behemoth that we see today, with Nemesis being known to stand roughly between 7 to 9 feet tall, with the build of an Olympic athlete on steroids, with the physical prowess of being able to break through barriers of walls, stopping cars, insane jumping verticality, and the use of tentacles that surrounds his body. And if looking closer at the RE3 remake's version, Nemesis is surrounded by the artificial tubes and an armored heart outside his body, which happens to be a signature of the Tyrant models during this era of production of BOWs, allowing Tyrants to have greater physical endurance due to the added circulatory system, with this resulting in the superhuman-like stamina, the range of attacks that he's able to achieve, while at the same time retaining a great amount of intelligence, which this factor in and of itself would be his greatest asset, because without this intelligence, his brute force would all be for naught. So the added benefits of increased intelligence would only amplify the already great physical prowess that he has. So now, since we have a great sense of his physical attributes, there is another trait that Nemesis has, which is his ability to take orders and hone in on his targets specified by those in charge, which this aspect still stemming from his increased intelligence due to the any alpha parasite, allowing Nemesis to use any means necessary to achieve the desired outcome of those in control of him, with the end result of this Tyrant being able to use different weapons, from the likes of his famous use of his rocket launcher, or maybe a minigun and a flamethrower that we saw from RE3 Remake, or if conventional means of weapons aren't in play, we see Nemesis at times be resourceful with the objects around his environment, using them as a substitute for his weaponry. Though at this point, this is still not the end of Nemesis' abilities, because looking from this Tyrant's perspective, we can see the robotic-like vision from his point of view, and is able to search and calculate the surrounding area. So once Nemesis is programmed to hunt for his targets, there's almost a surefire that he'll be able to locate his said victims within a good specified amount of time, explaining his hunts for the STARS members in Resident Evil 3, and how he's able to track and stalk Jill Valentine for a good amount of time, regardless of the distance between the two characters.
How did he find me?
So with all that said, where does this put us, the average person / gamer, against Nemesis? Because in context, Nemesis did fight Jill Valentine, who was part of the elite STARS team, and who's in at least has a good amount of combat experience against any kind of hostiles and other BOWs. So without this kind of experience that Jill Valentine has, we have to assume that we are at least somehow in a good amount of shape to at least try to flee from this Tyrant. Though this may only be prolonging the inevitable, because as mentioned earlier, Nemesis is bound to his orders from those in control of him, And with this Tyrant being able to search and locate his targets using a variant of robotic-like senses, it would be very difficult to gain that much of a distance from this monster. And if somehow we are able to get away from him and have a good amount of area between us and this monster, the sheer fact that we know that Nemesis is able to use his tentacles to swing around and be able to jump into high places, this ability of his would easily cover the distance that we've made from him. With the absolute perfect example of this was in the original RE3 and how Brad Vickers was ambushed in front of the RPD station, because this small moment lets us have a good calculation on how he hunts his targets, which if broken down, he displays his ability to leap from place to place, is able to locate Brad even though we know he's been on the run for a good amount of time, giving more of an example of that homing-like ability that he was programmed to have, and the added fact that he's able to lift him with one arm while simultaneously using his tentacle for a final blow. So with this in mind, running from Nemesis would be a terrible idea, which brings us to the next option that we have, which is probably to hide and hope that this Tyrant miscalculates his search for us. Though it may be successful for a short amount of time, this strategy I feel will eventually fail, because Nemesis is known to surprise his targets even when they are on the other side of the wall. So barricading yourself from this Tyrant would be a terrible idea in the long run, because sooner or later, he may just burst through the wall next to you. So with all this in mind, the only option that we have left would be to fight back. And of course, the best way to do so would be to use some type of weapon, because going to a hand-to-hand combat against Nemesis would be a foolish idea, and comparing Nemesis's physical attributes to the average person is a galaxy's worth of a difference, and probably would mean certain death.
Good luck!
Again, using Brad as an example of those not using a weapon, and how that would end up the same for those following his lead. Because if we broke down the physical combat aspect of trying to take down Nemesis, the normal human body would only be able to deal so much damage, let alone receiving it. Especially as we know Nemesis does deal with haymakers. And to put it in proper context, a professional boxer, more so a heavyweight, deals at least 1100 pounds of peak force with a single hit. Now compare that to a monster like Nemesis, who has superhuman-like physical prowess. A single clean punch from this Tyrant would deal an instant fatal blow, or a physically debilitating status, with again the end result leading to certain death.
Good luck!
So no amount of close quarters combat would be feasible at this point, and to do so would be the end of one's gene pool. So given this predicament, the use of a small handgun would probably stun him if shooting him in the head area, but that would only slow him down a bit, because as we saw in RE3 Remake, Jill doing this exact tactic only gave her a couple of seconds to flee from this Tyrant. So only going bigger on our firearms would be the viable choice, and the odds of someone having at least 2 or more guns inside their home in the US is only a little over 40% in 2020. So playing the odds out, one could assume that less than half would at least have a handgun, and possibly a shotgun to fight against Nemesis. And even then, these weapons would barely put a dent against this BOW, because unless you have a rocket launcher laying around, then having a smaller weapon would only slow him down by a tad bit. And even if you do somehow get your hands on a rocket launcher and be able to use it against Nemesis, well, that will still not be enough to put him down completely, because the great example shown with this was with Carlos in RE3 Remake, and how he was only able to stall Nemesis for a good amount of time, rendering this Tyrant unconscious for the time being. But let's say against all odds, we're able to deal a good amount of damage against this Tyrant. Where does that place us now? Because as we know that once Nemesis takes enough damage, he will be removed from his trenchcoat limiter and would fully mutate into the monstrosity that we saw from RE3 Remake, which in that form, Nemesis will be more animalistic in nature and shows a greater amount of speed and a variety of attacks, ranging from his feral close quarters attack to his longer range tentacle arm swipe. And if you were to survive both these attacks, Nemesis would just lunge in the air and drop down on your body, where the calculated G-force would be substantial due to the height that Nemesis is able to leap up from and the sheer body mass that he has, which in essence would be equivalent to having a small car being dropped on you from a couple of stories above your head. So all in all, surviving Nemesis is for sure a great ordeal to surpass, though almost impossible to achieve, because even Jill Valentine, who is known to be combat versed and very well experienced using different kinds of weapons, barely was able to take down this BOW. And that was with with the help of Carlos and this absurd railgun cannon that I know for sure that the average person would not have laying around in their household. So the end prognosis when trying to survive Nemesis would be certain death.
Good luck!
Anyways, what are your guys' thoughts about this new series of surviving some of our favorite characters in the gaming industry, particularly Nemesis for this episode? Please let me know in the comment section down below. Also, maybe if you guys do have an input of possibly taking down Nemesis without the ability of plot armor, please feel free to share as well. Anyways, I do hope you guys enjoyed this video. Also, let me know which characters you guys want me to cover next. Anyways, if you guys want more video content like this in the future, then please feel free to like and subscribe. And as always, you guys have a great rest of your day. And this is Hey DeVuH, and I'll see you guys on the next video.